Hey, budding lawyers, welcome to the podcast. Today we have advocate Sanket Jha with us. Hi, Sanket.
Hi Prasanna, how are you?
Good, good. Sanket is an advocate practicing in Bombay High Court, having good experience in handling matters related to environment law. And he is also a good friend of advocate Anshuman, with whom we had recorded our fourth episode, if you all remember, on writing a research paper. I'll be adding the link to that episode in the description below too. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, you must listen. Okay. And getting back to you, Sanket. So let's get into the past when you were in college. I have heard that you started getting paid for doing some legal task when you were in college itself. I am sure all of our listeners, law students, and even lawyers would be interested to know what kind of work did you do so that you start getting paid for it in your college itself. Because most of the students do internships and stuff, and internships are sometimes they get paid, but sometimes they don't even get paid. And so, can you how did you do that? What kind of work did you do?
See, I would say it's more of a sheer luck rather than hard work on my end, firstly. Because things actually take place not by your construct, it's more of a luck factor that comes into play while being a law student as such. Because nobody wants to pay a law student, let's be honest, for getting a legal job done. Or rather get the job done and not pay at all if that's the anyway. So as a law student, if you get some work, I would have preferred to do everything under the sun that comes your my that came my way. Right from IPR related work, which being end-to-end trademark registration and writing some certain written submissions for the trademark work, some commercial contract drafting for small scale clients, incorporation work, and some drafting some partnership deeds and notices. So this was all the work that I used to do while being a law student. And these kind of the payment used to come. I used to get paid for some of the work. Some of them I just used to do for the getting the job done.
Oh, okay. So partnership deeds and notices, we can understand there are drafts available. You just have to make those changes required and all. But regarding incorporation and stuff, uh, how did you come to know about it? Have you did you intern any in some corporate law firm before, or like how did you do that?
I had interned at a couple of small law firms before in my first and second year, and the major crux of my work back in law school used to come right from the third year. So until then, I had a decent network of at least law students who were working at different places at that relevant point of time. Certain advocates that I had come to know during the course of my internships and certain other social gatherings and so on. So all in all, I had a decent network wherein I can get the job done, or at least if I don't know the job, then I can understand how the job is done.
Mm.
So work like this, wherein incorporation work specifically, is not something rocket science. You can actually do it pretty decently back in law school also. People do it themselves, not being. I know of people who are not law, who do not have a law background, and they keep doing the incorporation work on a freelance basis. That's the bread and butter. So once you get the hang of it, once you understand the work, it's not a problem to get repeatedly do the same task.
Hmm.
Drafting of the AOA is something that you can do back in your third year also. It's not something that you think that you need to pass out from law school and then understand the work and then go on and do it. A lot of interns also used to do the incorporation work, at least at the back end, back when I was interning. So it's not such a fancy job that you cannot do it on your own. It's very easy to do it back in the law school only. The only requirement is that you should know how to do the work. Yeah.
Hmm.
And to understand how you do the work, you need to actually be very well networked with people who keep doing this work on a regular basis, so that you're always up to date on whatever is happening on the procedural front. And once you're up to date with that, getting the client is the only requirement that remains. And whether he pays you or not is a different ball game altogether,
Hmm.
depending on the kind of client you're sourcing.
So basically, you're saying that at least you must know how to get things done and from where. So even if you are not able to do everything, you can get the process done, and maybe you can charge the fees for like consulting or something like that.
Of course. And you need to keep in mind that, of course, you do not have the luxury to charge as much as people who generally do, who keep doing this work and who actually have an expertise on this. You need to understand your shortcoming which is basically one thing that you are a law student and the other party will try to, negotiate very hard on that front that, okay, I'm giving the job to you. It's kind of a favor to you. But then you need to hold your own fort as to what is the minimum charges that you can take from that prospective client and decide on your end if you want to charge whatever.
Right. So, are there any other requirements apart from, knowing the procedures and the people involved in that process to get that job done? Does any other requirements come to your mind?
I think the foremost requirement is to keep upskilling yourself. It's not that, let's in our example, if we are talking about incorporation only, just knowing the incorporation and that is not the end of it. You need to understand the laws around it. You need to understand the corollary work that goes around it. If there's an incorporation work, what other work is related to that work that a client might need? So that is something that will keep you in good stead. Understanding how to file a trademark. Any entity would generally, if you're starting a brand, you would need a trademark. You will apply for a trademark. And this is
Hmm.
again not a very tough job to do. And this is something that I luckily learned in my second year internship, wherein I used to file a bunch of trademarks and write the written submissions and oppositions and so on, which was basically end-to-end trademark work. And post third year, there were people who needed the job. You need to get the job done, and luckily I was there for it. So yeah, things work out. But on the requirement front, other than upskilling yourself, you have to get people to trust you to do the job. That is a requirement that people don't understand. If as a prospective professional, as a future lawyer, I need to understand that as a law student also, I need to generate that trust in the client for him to give me the work. And why should it, and you need to have the answer to the question as to why you and why not
Yeah,
someone else.
exactly. Right.
That is very important, and that is very subjective. That is not something that can be a copy paste answer that you can just give. It's up to you. It's up to your skills. So always be prepared with such answers. Have the confidence to do the work. Once you know the work, you'll naturally have the confidence. And to land a client is the last punch that is required. People always forget the back end work that is required before you get the client. Understanding the work, how to code your fees, and so on and so on.
Yeah. And I think people, law students more focus on the money which you will get paid. But I think this process teaches you a lot. Like, even if you don't get paid, you'll be very like corporate ready. Once you get your LLB degree, you will be like, you can start your own practice, you can start your own work getting clients directly after LLB. Otherwise, what happens is people complete their graduation, then they have to work with some seniors to learn the work. They spend around 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, and then they start their independent work. So if you start doing such jobs from your college days itself, then it will be easier for them to start their independent work just after their graduation, right?
See, again, adding to that, money will be always be a byproduct of the work you do. And as a law student, you have I speak from a position of privilege, of course, wherein, earning money while studying was not actually a very big requirement for me. It was something that happened instantly. But, there are people who actually need the finances are more important than anything else. But if you don't have that kind of liability on you or any other kind of responsibility on you, it's always better to get to understand how the work, how things work, how understand the nitty-gritties of the work. And money will always flow as a byproduct. If you know the work as a law student, you land a client, you know someone who needs to get a job done, money is a natural extension of that. And as a law student, you have the privilege that speaking from my experience, it's like even if you're making 5 or 10,000 a month as a law student, it's more than sufficient. You're
Hmm.
covering your expenses at least. Of course, as a professional, it might not sound too much, but then as a law student, you have that privilege. To have that luxury.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, now let's move on to your other stuff which you are doing right now. So you have been handling environment related matters for a while. Is there any motivation behind choosing those matters, or you have something else in your mind?
See, of course, tracing back to how I entered environmental law, it was something more of a personal decision for me because my university was somewhere in Dehradun, in the outskirts of Dehradun. So there was a lot of greenery there, and I've been staying in Mumbai for the past decade. So when I returned after my law school to Mumbai to start my practice, I had landed a job back then in a small law firm. So that was something that actually took me by surprise as to why I cannot adjust to a place I've been living for so long. And that was mainly due to the environmental degradation that I could just notice after a gap of 5 years. And having lived there, you never generally see wide scale unless there's some wide scale destruction and all. So I thought, why not use my skills, and I had the luxury of just starting out right after law school. I had the time. I knew I wanted what I wanted to do. So I thought I'll give it a year. I'll just focus on the area of law for a particular year, see what I can do, see what difference I can make, and see if I can make it as one of my practice areas in the future. So that was how I got into it. I mean, the motivation was this, that moment of actually being in Mumbai and realizing, oh, this place has changed so much. I need to do something about it. And being a lawyer, that's one of the best professions that can actually get the job done. So yes, environmental law was something of a decision that was happened in an instant, so to speak. It was not pre-planned as such.
So you were working in a firm and then you just decide to switch from the law firm job to your independent practice in environment law? Is that like?
Correct. So I left my corporate law job after 5 or 6 months from that firm because I realized that since it was a small firm, the best part about that was that you get a lot of responsibility. It's not you. I know for a fact that the major difference that comes across, other than financially, of course, of working in a big law firm and a small law firm, is that the kind of responsibility you shoulder in your initial years is very, very different. In the big firms, you might be working on mandates on a very specific part of a very large mandate. But in a small firm, you get the mentoring one-to-one. I was lucky to work directly under the partner there, the managing partner there. So, there was no intermediary in between. There was a lot of mentoring going on. And in the 5 or 6 months, I ended up I remember in the second month itself, I started negotiating the contracts and the clauses and so on with other very, very seniors on the other end of for the other party. So the learning curve was very great. That is why I understood that, if I can do the job by myself also now. That was the realization after 6 months. And environmental litigation was something that I was pondering about. And then things just happened. So I left the job without anything in hand as such. And then I started out independently.
Okay. So, see, some lawyers take up various types of matters, while some stick to a specific area of law and build their expertise in it. Even some firms stick to just one area of law, like there are IPR law firms, then there are, corporate law firms who are focused only on incorporation and mergers and acquisitions, etc. So, is it easier to establish your practice in a smaller area of law, or it is better to be open to other areas of law too, so that you have matters from other fields of law too?
See, again, when you're starting out, you actually don't have the luxury of choosing your own matters. If at all you're not working in a firm as such, if you're working out independently, you generally don't have a luxury, like if you're a first generation lawyer like me. Secondly, it's certainly makes sense to specialize in a specific practice area and build your practice thereon, because it's relatively better in the sense that you can focus on your capacity building in that specific area of law. You can be an expert very soon rather than being a general practitioner. If you focus on one area for 1 year or whatever, 6 months, you are way faster than a general practitioner who is in the same boat and he's trying to establish his presence in that area. So in that sense, I would generally advise to be a specialist rather than being a general practitioner, because in today's times, it's become increasingly difficult for an individual lawyer to have a very good general practice, and foraying into all the areas of law. And with time, specialization will be the key to your success. Specialized lawyers are in demand. Even now and few years down the line, the requirement will be much more. People are not preferring, I know from my limited experience, that generally clients focus on specialized lawyers. If they're now looking for a lawyer and there's a divorce case going on, they would want to know who is a divorce lawyer rather than who is just a lawyer. who's someone who is known for his divorce cases and so on. So anyhow, it's any day better to specialize rather than being a general practitioner. That's my view. But having said that, it always helps to have a general understanding of other areas of law also. So if you're not sure about, I mean, that is my advice to anybody starting out. If you're not sure about the specific practice area, be a general practitioner, work into any number of practice areas that you think you want to foray into. And then once you get your calling, just dive into that specific practice area as soon as possible. And the general practice will actually help you in having a holistic understanding of things, but you can't actually continue for much longer independently, working in general practice areas, because as an expert you're not counted upon anything. You're a general practitioner, you work on 5 or 6 areas of law, or 7, 8 areas of law, whatever. But if there's a requirement of a specialist, that's where you lack.
Yeah, so how do you think one must start? If like they must stick to one area of law from the start itself when they start their work after their graduation, or they must take some experience from other areas of law too, and then decide which area they must specialize in?
See, again, this answer I'll have to take a step back and actually question the relevant candidate as to what your goals are. If you intend to work in a law firm, if you intend to work in a very big law firm, chances are very high that you will be placed in a specialized team, except for some firms. Some of the big firms do a 6-month rotation of different practice areas, and then you get to choose your specific practice area. So in that sense, if you want to land a law firm job in one of the big 6 or the bigger firms, so to speak, so then you need to start working on that specific practice area right from the first year itself. Because by the time you're in your 3rd or 4th year, you will need to have built yourself a profile that matches that practice area, be it in the nature of writing research papers or in the nature of internships that you have done in that particular practice area. If not, if you intend to work as a general practitioner or do not intend to join a very big law firm and actually want to foray into different practice areas and are not sure about what you want to do after law school, then I would suggest that right from your first year, go into as many things as you can. Law school is the best time to experience different things. Nobody is going to question you as to why you did something. You can always say to diversify your experience, even if that was something that actually did not help you as much, but the experience helps you in some way or the other. So having said that, if you're not aiming for that particular law firm job, I think in the law school itself, you need to diversify your interests. You need to pick brains of people who are working in the area of law you think you might want to go into. Understand from them how the work happens in the real world. How much divorce is the laws that we come across in our books and the actual practice, and if that is something that you're willing to work on. Once you get an understanding, you can always start working under a lawyer, or there are many other avenues as of now. This is a very age-old practice of working under a senior lawyer and then branching out on your own. There are many other things that you can do and actually branch out very well, right? But then again, you have to start out early. You cannot wait to finish your law school and then think, okay, I'll join a general practice and then I'll maybe figure out. And you see that in the 5 years that happened in my law school, I did not do anything for this to understand what I want to do. So again, the key is to start early, as per my understanding.
Yeah, right. And as you just said, that your experience will always help, because you won't get a matter, even if you are a specialist, you won't get a matter only related to that area of law. It will have some element of civil law, it will have some element of criminal law, something like that. Matters are always like that. It is not purely from one area of law.
Of course. And even so, to add to that, if you have, I do not necessarily restrict to one specific practice area. Again, I'm speaking that from an individual lawyer's perspective, is that you can have 2 or 3 practice areas, 3, 4 max, that you understand the work, but then again you're focusing on those specific 2 or 3 practice areas only. The reason I say so is that if one practice area, there are certain practice areas that are cyclical, say M&A for example. So M&A, there might be a boom in some particular months of the year or a particular year, and there might be a slump in the number of mandates that are happening in the legal circle for the M&A mandates.
Hmm.
So then again, if you have some other practice area that you can fall back upon in that particular relevant point of time, then that will help you very much. So you can branch out to 2 or maybe 3, but then again, it's ideal to restrict yourself to those 3 only. If restricting yourself to one specific practice area is something that you think you do not want to do, 2 or 3 is totally fine.
Yeah, yeah, and if you're especially working alone, like your individual building your individual practice, then it makes sense to stick to 2, 3 areas of law only. Okay, so what are the challenging aspects of managing and running an individual practice as you are building your practice from few years? So I know that you must have faced many challenges. So can you just point out some of them?
See, I think the biggest challenge is that as a individual practitioner, you need to don as many hats as possible in your practice. You need to be the guy, you need to be the person who is responsible for business development. You're also the person who is responsible for execution of the work. You're also the person responsible for managing the finances and ensuring that the balance between your revenues and your expenditure is, ideal in your particular instance, whatever that may be. So again, I believe the challenge is donning as many hats that are there to offer as an individual practitioner. And again, the biggest skill that you can bring to the table is time management. Hands down, that is the most important thing that you will need to understand once you start out your practice, because you'll always have 100 or 200 things to do during the whole day, but you need to prioritize what you need to do. Again, so time management skills are something that are extremely crucial to build your practice.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that is something that I find that people find the most challenging. I mean, more than financial compensation and other practice building things that you need to do time to time. It's the time management skills are something that are extremely they are a differentiator, I would say, from the successful ones.
Okay, so regarding environment law, can you say like is there a good side and bad side of practicing in environment law? And if yes, then what is it?
See, I think from a overall perspective, it's environmental law is still a very David versus Goliath story, so to speak. You know, we always see environmental law as the good people trying to save the environment, and then there are the bad corporates trying to destroy them at all costs. So this is the general perception, and it is true to a certain extent. Of course, most of the litigations happen around this main basic story only, is that there is someone trying to destroy the environment for any project, or causing certain destruction to the environment through their projects, however good they may be. And there are people on the other end who are trying to protect the environment at all costs, and they do not want the project to go on whatsoever if there's even an iota of destruction. So I think the bad side is that there's no balance as to with respect to this story. You cannot bring these two people together and have a solution wherein both of them go off the table very satisfied. There will always be one party who will say that, oh no, I got a bad deal, this should not have happened. So getting a balance in the environmental disputes is very, very difficult. I mean, even the judges find it pretty difficult to balance it out, to have to do justice in the true sense. And the bad side, I would say, also add to it that there are very few lawyers who actually practice environmental law, so to speak. I know of law students who still do not understand that environmental law can be a practice area that you can have in your kitty. And they think only corporate law pays, and other financial practice areas are the ones that pay you. Again, environmental law is something that people understand, I believe. As such, the whole practice of how it happens, that is where people are lacking in. And we need to, I think the jurisprudence of environmental law has a lot to evolve. There's a lot of potential to evolve. You have a lot of good Supreme Court judgments and all, but then I believe there's a lot of scope for the whole environmental law jurisprudence to evolve, as the corporate law jurisprudence evolved in the 90s with the liberalization and all that. I believe there's still a boom for environmental law in the coming years. When that may happen, I cannot answer, but I believe there's still a lot way to go. A lot more to go in environment.
So you are saying that mediation usually doesn't work in environmental law matters.
Generally doesn't, because the people are hell-bent on getting their side of the story accepted all the way. People are not willing to even back off, slide off a little bit. But then again, that's a personal decision, and as a lawyer, you need to ensure that your client gets the best result out of your efforts.
And I think these matters are not so simple, like someone is degrading the environment and someone is trying to save. There are livelihoods involved of people who are affected by those projects. And also, there may be cases where the matters are instigated by other corporate who want that project or something like that. It's quite complicated, right?
Yes. It's a very oversimplification. Again, that's what I told, that people oversimplify environmental law into a good versus bad practice, and that's how the case is supposed to go on. But then there are many nitty-gritties to the practice, that one of which you mentioned is a very, very strict reality, and a very harsh reality, that people actually instigate disputes for their other objectives and so on. But hopefully the story changes in the future, and people understand more about it, that there's more to it.
Yeah, that's quite difficult, but let's hope for the best. Yeah. So, are there any books, journals, or websites you keep on referring to which you think are good to read for those who aspire to make their career in environment law?
Generally, I have an automated system of having, I source many things from many places related to environmental law that generally come in my email itself. So I have an automated system of wherever there's no specific website that I would recommend. But having said that, for anyone trying to venture into this practice, I would say firstly get all the bare acts in your knowledge. You need to have the bare acts at your tips, be it the NGT Act or all other applicable laws in environmental laws. You need to know them. And then to dive deep into them, I would suggest go through any book, any reference book that you think it's. The reason I do not recommend any specific book is that people may find some of it to be difficult or some of it to be extremely easy or plain. So it's up to you. You can get a feel of the book. There are many books right now in the market. Pick anyone that suits your needs and dive deep into it. But the most important thing that you can do is go through the judgments. That is something that you cannot slack off on. You need to be updated about all the recent judgments that have happened in the Supreme Court or in the various high courts or in the NGTs we have the different benches of. So again, reading judgments will keep you more in a good stead rather than reading books after a point. That's what I believe. Judgments are the best way to go. Once you get a flavor of it, you can understand the whole story behind why the judgment actually came through and what were the reasons through. So I think more of a learning experience happens through reading of judgments. As for websites and books, that you can anyway Google and get whatever, read from wherever you can. There's no hard and fast rule to go through some specific website and refer it.
Okay, fair enough. See, as you started working early from your college days itself, so I'm sure that you would have done certain things right, certain things wrong, and you would have learned from it. So, if one wants to start early, how should one plan? Any tips on that?
See, I think the biggest mistake that people do, and even I did up to a certain point, is that, I diverge from my goals, identifying my goals as to what I want to do and what I do not want to do. That is more important. So having an understanding of this in a timely manner I understand it's very difficult, to expect someone right into law school and having passed an year, having finished his first year, to expect a very concrete answer from that person as to what you want to do. There's so many things to offer. The profession is so broad, so wide, so many things on offer. So I think what the best thing that you can do for yourself, and this is my suggestion for everyone, is to identify your goal as soon as possible as to what you want to do. If it's if you are a judicial aspirant, I would advise you to stick to it no matter what. It's not you don't have to be swooned away from the riches of a law firm job or the other prospects that you have while graduating from law school. I mean, if you identify your goals, stick to it, and just keep on doing it no matter what.
Yeah. Don't get distracted from.
Don't get digressed. If you digress from your goal, it's not going to help you at all. It's ideal to explore, of course. I mean, but as soon as you identified your goal, please stick to it.
Okay. Yeah. Um, can you please share an incident from your career which is very memorable to you?
See, the most memorable one will be, I mean, the ones that I felt the most euphoria from. So that was back when I had left my law firm job and started out. I had a month wherein I was doing almost nothing, and slowly the work had started to come in. And that is when I negotiated. I mean, it might sound very boring, but it was actually very good for me. I felt very happy after that. Is that I successfully negotiated a contract with for a client who had some goods to be exported to Russia, and I was negotiating with a Russian lawyer who was, I mean, was almost just junior to almost, who became a partner after 2 years. I mean, right now he's a partner in that firm. So that was a very big high for me to have successfully represented a client and getting the deal done through, and getting all the blessings from the client itself for getting the job well done. So that was very memorable because I had just started out, and things like this, they keep you in good stead. This profession is very cyclical, of course. You will have your highs, you will have your lows. So in the low time, when you think that you don't have enough work or things are not going as well as you have planned, incidents like this, you keep motivating you. If I could do that back then, I mean, that's what I think. If I could do that back then, I can hell do it now. I can do a much better job, and yeah, so that's very memorable for me.
If you can tell us about the work you actually did, like because it was an international client you were dealing with. So what kind of work was it?
So there was I mean, broadly speaking, it was a commercial agreements. There was a trail of commercial agreements that had to be drafted and executed, and so on. So the best part was that there are Russian laws involved, and the other side is always trying to get the clauses that are favorable more to them and not to the Indian party, of course. And negotiating those clauses and getting a sweet deal for your client. I mean, that's the general crux of the work that happens. Negotiating the clauses took a lot of time. As such, the finalization of the contractual documents was not something that took up much of time. So I would say a drafting and negotiating of the commercial agreements was the broad baseline, so to speak. If you want to go into more depth, then it involved NDAs, it involved sale purchase agreements, and so on. But anyway, that's a broad line of it.
Yeah, got it. So this kind of work you did it from like in your starting phase of your career. So I think that was quite interesting to me.
Yeah, see, this is why that's the most memorable for me, because once you're started out and you get such a work, of course, it's a lot of luck. I always say that you have to be very lucky also to get such a sort of mandate. It's not just hard work. There are a lot of hardworking people out there. There are a lot of brilliant lawyers out there. But getting the mandates becomes a different ball game altogether. I mean, and I believe that your efforts do matter, of course, but then a sheer amount of luck is also very helpful. And touch wood, I have been lucky on that front.
Yeah, agree. Okay, thanks Sanket for this wonderful conversation and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me over.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you like this episode, then you must also check out other episodes available here and follow us here so that you don't miss out a new episode. Thank you.